Good afternoon. It's well, barely afternoon. But good afternoon. I'm happy that you're here. And today we are going to talk about some of those challenging behaviors or top discipline problems that as parents we have all faced. And as usual, there's a delay in my screen moving forward. There we go. Um, I think that you've been in my workshops before, so I'll go through this quickly. This is just a little bit about the Child Care Resource and Referral Network. We do free referrals for families to childcare that can meet their needs. We provide information about childcare. We connect families to other resources that can meet their needs. And okay, thank you very much for letting me know. And we help families access financial support for childcare and provide free workshops such as this one. This is our service delivery area. We are the lighter blue color. And this is our team of family engagement specialists. I'm the one on the bottom. My name is Sarah Hoover, and I've been in early childhood education for about 25 years. And before that, I was a social worker working with children and families. And I have 3 children. 2 are adults, and 1 is just started high school. And as usual, this session is being recorded, but I really I'm hoping that you can ask questions or share any experiences. We all learn from one another. But if you would rather that not happen during the recording, I always make sure to stop the recording before the end, so you have an opportunity to share or ask questions at that time. So welcome. Today we're going to learn about, like I said, some loving guidance strategies. These were around conscious discipline. So I can't cover everything in a half hour, but we're going to move through some common challenging behaviors and look at some of the strategies that conscious discipline gives us. And since we only have one person on, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you'd like to introduce yourself and share the ages of your children, you are welcome to do that now. I'll just give you a couple seconds, and if not, I'm just going to keep moving on.
Oh, I'm not on mute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, hi. I'm Jane, and I have a grandson who is 2 that we have custody of. So he's in
Okay.
the terrible 2s.
Okay, one of my examples is a 2-year-old, so I
Good.
hope I can help a little bit. That's a very challenging age. Did you happen to attend the one that I recently did on child development?
Yes,
Okay, awesome. This will be a good follow-up to that then. Thank you.
no problem.
So when we're thinking about dealing with challenging behaviors and thinking about loving guidance, as adults, this is a nice reminder that conscious discipline gives us, is really, it starts with those healthy relationships, having a positive relationship with the children that we care for. Um, and and our job is to help them be more likely to choose to comply with our wishes. Um, so it's kind of a nice way to kind of flip your thinking from how can I make my child or my grandchild, how can I make them do what I want them to do or what they need to do? But flipping your thinking to how can I help them be more likely to choose to do so? And then the child's job, we know, when you look at child development and how children grow and learn and test limits, um, depending on their developmental level, their job is to understand what's okay and what's not okay and to test those limits. And when you start with those healthy relationships, when children feel loved and valued and capable, they're far more likely to choose to cooperate. They're far more likely to choose to comply with what we're telling them to do or what we need them to do. So it comes back to that loving relationship is the foundation for your success. And the younger the child, the more important those relationships are, as far as encouraging children to comply with our wishes, as well as learning and growing. All learning occurs within relationships. So the first one I wanted to talk about are the power struggles, which are very common and frequent with 2-year-olds. And so one thing to consider starting out is that all children will resist and refuse and oppose. It's part of that developmental journey. It's literally part of their development. It's how they learn what is okay and what is not okay. So here are 3 skills that you can use to avoid getting into a power struggle. And the first one are assertive commands. There's lots and lots of information and resources and conscious discipline about assertive commands. And I'm just going to touch on it briefly, but just to give you an idea of what that means. The first step is for yourself to breathe. Take those, if you need, the 3 deep breaths, because in order to help a child move through their emotions and their struggles, the first thing that you need to be yourself is calm. The only way you can calm an upset child is if you are calm yourself. The next thing is to focus on what you want the child to do, rather than focusing on what we don't want them to do. Don't hit, don't run. We want to focus on what we do want to see. So we want the child to use gentle touches, or we want the child to use their words, or we want the child to use their walking feet. And then the name, verb, and paint is a great way to give those commands. So basically, when you name what you want them to do, well, their name, the verb is what you want them to do, and then you really want to paint a picture of what you expect. And the more you paint that picture of what you expect, the more likely the child is to comply. And with a younger child in particular, you can match words and use gestures. So use those supporting gestures. So for example, you would want to get on the child's level and say their name, like Sam, and then the verb. For example, it's time to get in your car seat. So Sam, it's time to get in your car seat, and then paint the process. So I'm going to pick you up and sit you down. Then I'm going to use the seat belt, and I'm going to click the seat belt, and just kind of walk through the process of what is expected in a very assertive tone with you being calm. Another way is to offer choices. And when offering choices, make sure that they're both positive choices. And then ask which one is best. So for example, when we say 2 positive choices, it wouldn't be you can get in the car or you can go to timeout. That's one positive choice and one punitive choice. So you might think about something that could work for you, like, do you want to climb into your car seat, or do you want me to pick you up and put you in your car seat? Do you want to put your shoes on first, or do you want to put your coat on first? And then ask them which one is best for you, or which one do you choose? And then when you're asking them to make choices, some responses, if the child cooperates and makes a choice, you want to celebrate that. You chose to put your shoes on first. Good for you. If the child escalates, if temper tantrum or running away or yelling, I don't want to put my shoes on, this is a good time to use the skill of empathy. I know you don't want to put your shoes on. You don't want to leave um, in the car, and just kind of be at their level and give them that empathy while they throw their fit until they return to a more cooperative state. And giving empathy, a great way to do that is to describe, name, and acknowledge. Conscious discipline calls it the DNA. So describe would be you're making an angry face, you're making fists, you're kicking the seat, and then naming that emotion. You're angry because you don't want to be in the car. And that goes along with acknowledgement. And sometimes just giving that empathy will help calm that child down. And then after a power struggle, because we all get into them, and we even as teenagers, and if you do lose your calm, and I know for myself, I have a lot of parenting guilt. If I lose my calm and I yell or don't necessarily remember some of the other strategies to help calm the child down, the first step really is to forgive yourself and come up with a plan together. Engage your child in problem solving. Come up with a plan together for the future that will help them choose to obey. Come up with a plan for next time when it's time to leave and get in the car. What can we do that will make it easier? Sometimes having a lot of choices can be overwhelming for children, and they don't necessarily realize the choices that they make each day. So point those out. If your child chooses a particular cereal, you chose this. Point out the choices that they're successful at making throughout the day. And then play with your child regularly. Even 5 minutes of focused, uninterrupted time, just one-on-one with your child, can decrease power struggles. And I've heard numbers by as much as 50%. Just having that one-on-one time to play with your child can decrease those power struggles, because again, it comes back to that relationship building. Tattling is another big one, probably not for the 2-year-old yet. So I'll go through this a little quicker. Plus, I'm also trying to be very mindful of time. We may have to revisit some of these in another workshop, and that's fine too. Tattling is something that can be very frustrating for parents, as well as teachers and caregivers and grandparents, I'm sure. Even if you might not necessarily be seeing that from your 2-year-old yet. We tend to think it's not nice to tattle, go use your words. But we know that developmentally, children up to 8 years of age, they're genetically programmed to bring their problems and their upsets to us. And we want children to bring their problems and their upsets to us. We don't want to discourage the instinct completely, because we want children to trust authority and to reach out when they need something. So conscious discipline looks at tattling as that request for help, and then looks at how can we use tattling as a teaching tool rather than discouraging children from coming to us when they're upset about something. So there's 3 types of tattling that you might respond to in a slightly different way. The first one is intrusion tattling, and that's more when some sort of victimization occurs, like when somebody calls them a name, and the children are expressing that they don't know how to handle the situation. And this is the situation where we can teach children to use their big voice, which is that voice of assertiveness. And sometimes children might need the actual words, or they might even need the tone. Going back with an aggressive tone or an unkind tone isn't going to help that child solve that situation. unless they're using that assertive voice. So giving them the words to say, like say stop or say no. For a little bit older child, you can say, I don't like it when you call me names. And you can practice with them for an older child. Practice and help them so that when they go back to the child that did something that they didn't like, they have the tools to be able to handle it on their own. Revenge tattling. This is when children feel others aren't behaving as they should. And sometimes the end goal is to get the other child into trouble. This is very, very common. And our response to revenge tattling is we really want to teach children that helpfulness is a better problem-solving tool than revenge. We really want to bring it back to how the child can be helpful. So an example of this would be, are you telling me to be helpful or hurtful? And then encourage the child to consider, to reflect on why they're telling. So an example would be, so you want Sam to be successful and follow our agreements if in a school setting. How could you help remind her to clean up? And then give that child that tool to go back to the other child and use the right tone of voice and say something that is helpful. Safety tattling. This is when children are reporting a safety issue, and we want children to come to us when something like this is happening. And so we want to teach children to trust authority and reaffirm that it's our job as the adult to keep the classroom or the home safe. So telling me was helpful, I will keep them safe, is a great response for that type of tattling. Are there any questions so far? I'm just kind of plowing forward, but if you want me to slow down or if you have questions, please feel free.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lying. That's another common behavior that parents and grandparents deal with. So when thinking about children that lie, it's always helpful again to go back to that child development piece and understand that this really is, again, part of how children grow and develop and understand the world around them. They're developing those reasoning abilities and beginning to explore differences between fact and fiction. And this includes making up stories. There's gray areas, and they're exploring that. So two big ways to respond to lying. The first one is to focus on what behavior you want to see and offer two choices, followed by encouragement and connection. So, for example, if you see that a child wrote their name on your wall, this was an example in one of the conscious discipline books, and you ask your child if they wrote their name on the wall and they say no, and you know that they're lying, you can ensue into a power struggle of trying to make them tell you what they did, or you can move forward by offering two choices. So the example here would be, look at your name on the wall. You can clean it up with a washcloth or a sponge. Which will you use? And then follow that up with encouragement. You did it. You cleaned your name off the wall. Now the wall is clean. And always follow up with connection. So a great example here is, after I put the groceries away, let's sit together and we can practice writing your name on paper. The other way to handle lying is to shift focus from how to make the child tell the truth to how I can help the child be more likely to tell the truth. In a situation, writing on the wall, you don't necessarily need the child to admit that they lied, especially if you're able to offer those choices and have the child clean clean the wall and the situation is resolved. But in a situation such as stealing, rather than focusing on how to make the child tell the truth, really think about how can I create that safe space for my child to admit a mistake. So an example here would be stealing a candy bar from a store. You could say, I think when we were shopping, you saw the candy bar and really wanted it. You knew I wouldn't buy it, but you wanted it so badly you couldn't help yourself from taking it. And then pausing and seeing if the child responds. The child might say, I really wanted it. You wanted it, so you stole it. How do you feel now about what you did? If you're calm, chances are the child is going to respond in some way about how they feel about it. And then follow up. You chose to steal the candy bar. Oh, I skipped a step. The candy bar is not yours. It must be returned. We must go back to the store. And then after that, follow up. You chose to steal the candy bar. Then you acted responsibly by returning the candy bar to the store manager. How do you feel now about what you did? And then pointing out how when you do something, when you make a mistake, and you learn from it, you can tell if something is right or wrong by how it makes you feel. It feels bad to steal something, but it feels good to correct your mistake. So just kind of helping walk the child through in a way that is safe for them to learn from that mistake. So I've got 3 scenarios, and I will try not to spend too much time on these so we don't run out of time. The first one is clean your room. For a 2-year-old, this could be cleaning up a playtime mess. For a 2-year-old, chances are this is not necessarily a chronic problem because their responsibilities are much smaller. So this is maybe a larger example. For a 2-year-old, you can still use these strategies, but just maybe on a simpler level. But if you have an older child and their unwillingness to clean their room is more of a chronic problem, then you really want to start with problem solving, not consequences. Even for my teenager, it is a chronic problem. And we're still working on. And so really to start, it would be defining the problem and creating an action plan together. For example, how can we help you be successful in keeping your room clean? Listening to suggestions that children have, even if they're ridiculous, listening to them without being upset, but working towards a final plan that is realistic and reasonable. So for example, setting a weekly designated time during which the whole family cleans their respective rooms. And then while your child is cleaning their room, or if it's a young child, a 2-year-old cleaning up after playing, offering encouragement and then connection. So to offer encouragement to help keep the child focused, a great way to do that is to notice accomplishments. So it could be something as simple as you picked up the blue block and you put it in the bin. So just noticing the small efforts that the child is making. Offer choices if your child is having a hard time staying focused. You could, I'm trying to think back to a toddler. You could put the car away, or you could put the block away. Which will you choose? And then encourage. You chose to put the car away. You can handle it. You're cleaning up. Any questions about that one?
Nope, we're working on that right now.
I understand. And you know, you will work on that for a really long time. And then the stop hitting and be nice. This is another common one. The example that I'll talk about is 2 siblings that go into each other's rooms. And in situations like this, really consider how it will benefit you in the future if you teach children how to resolve conflict rather than by punishing them. Your first thought is to simply punish the child that is doing the hitting. But taking it one step further and thinking about how can I teach them to resolve this conflict, rather than just punishing. And how will that help them in the future to be able to start handling challenging situations without having it result in hitting. So the first step is listening and then reflecting back what the children are saying and keeping in mind positive intent. We say positive intent, it's thinking about what was each child, what were they intending, in a more positive manner than what the outcome was. So an example would be, you wanted him out of your room, so you asked him to leave, but he wouldn't. So you hit him. So did he hit him just because he wanted to hurt him? No, not necessarily. He wanted his brother out of his room and his brother wouldn't leave. So, the obvious response to that is, you may not hit. When you ask him to leave and he does not listen, come and get me. And I will help you solve the problem without hitting. And then the other boy, you wanted to play with him in his airplane, so you came in his room and you stood there. When you want to play with him or when you want to play with his toys, you must say, can I see your airplane? Or will you play with me? And then help them come up with a plan together about going into each other's rooms, and what they think will work out, and come up with that plan and then encourage them to follow that plan. The other thing I'll say about this is the stop hitting and be nice phrase. Make sure that children know what be nice means to you, what you expect from them when you say be nice. So the first boy that did the hitting, he wanted his brother out of his room and his brother wasn't listening to him, telling him to be nice. What does that mean to him? Because he didn't want his brother in his room. So just thinking about the importance of explaining the behavior that you expect. You may not hit your brother, but when you ask him to leave and he doesn't listen to you, that means that you need help and come and get me. So just making sure that rather than saying be nice or nice touches, or share, make sure that you're painting that picture for the child of what you expect from them, what be nice looks like, when you say share, what you really mean when you say share. Children are more likely to comply and be cooperative when they understand exactly what the expectation is. And it is 12:29. I'm so sorry. I'm going to skip the last one. And just end with this reminder. This is something that I remind myself of regularly. Dr. Becky Bailey, who developed Creative Curriculum, says, for one last time, I want to remind you that the way in which you treat yourself is the way in which you will treat your children and the way in which they will treat others. And that's one thing I really like about conscious discipline is that it's adult first, that we have to treat ourselves well, and always give ourselves opportunities to calm and regulate our own emotions before we can help children, before we can teach children. And if we treat ourselves well and give ourselves the time and the energy to calm, and we teach children how to become calm themselves, then they will in turn treat others in a much kinder way. So I just really like that. And then this is just some of the conscious discipline resources, and I will send this presentation to you so that you can access the links directly. These examples are out of the Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline book. So I am going to stop the recording.